Welcome to the Thoughtful Software Podcast. Innovate and thrive with thoughtful software. This podcast is all about helping technology leaders simplify innovation, build emerging tech, and confidently fuel digital initiatives. Join Andrew Wolf and Fahad Shokat as they discuss how to navigate the ever-changing software landscape. Keep it simple, focus on people, and consistently deliver value.
All right, Andrew, let's talk about digital transformation today. Two big words that bring up a lot of mixed feelings. Over the next few years, 6 trillion will be spent on digital transformation. Yet sadly, 70% of these initiatives are going to fail. And the ones that do succeed, I read that only 15 to 25% will see any significant improvement. This even includes like digital companies like tech and media and telecom. So it's pretty crazy. So today we're going to unpack some of this and help technology leaders think about digital transformation more thoughtfully. And it doesn't have to be this big bang. So digital transformation for sure is a big topic. It could be around like modernizing applications, moving to the cloud, automating manual tasks, using emerging tech for better client experiences, or a number of other areas. One thing to be clear, companies do have to continue to innovate. So it's important. You have to move forward or you will be left in the dust. So the first thing we often see is enterprises bringing a bunch of consultants to plan out their digital transformation. They set aside like millions and billions of dollars, a big press release, and tons of announcements. But ultimately, lots of problems come after that. So, Andrew? Why isn't this a good place to start?
When we talk about tech, the word that always comes to mind is agility. And the definition of a large crowd of people trying to be agile, it just doesn't exist. And so when you deploy a huge crowd of people to make yourself more agile, of course it doesn't work. And I think the way you start with is what parts of your business need the most transformation? Where are you going to measure success? How are you going to measure outcomes? And how are you going to continually work? That's a continually changing function, if you will. As soon as you do one sort of digital transformation in one area, it might change the calculus for the rest of them. So if you do them all at once, you don't necessarily do them in parallel, sure, so you get gains of speed. But the other part you don't get is you have no idea how these are all going to work together. But if you do it in an evolutionary way, one little bit at a time or two pieces at a time, you end up being able to see the entire picture and you end up being able to be more nimble, more agile. And I think in reality, you actually go faster and see a lot more value doing it that way than trying to do the entire business all at once. I just don't see those working out because there's no way you're going to have split brain. You're not going to have integration. You're not going to be able to share strategies and learnings and everything else that are required for these huge strategic transformations at a business.
It's interesting, though. One of the major reasons digital transformations fail is that companies tend to isolate the group that's leading the digital transformation. So how do you not spread it so far across the organization, but also keep it contained? Maybe you drive it through a few passionate people, but how do you balance that out?
Yeah, so let's talk about parallelization for a minute. From a computation theory, and a lot of things that are computationally true tend to be organizationally true too. To maximize parallelization in an organization or a computer, you want to prevent sharing. The more sharing between parallel processes or parallel organizations, the less likely they are to actually be parallel. And at some point, with enough sharing, they become perpendicular and they will intersect. As these organizations try to move quickly, they've parallelized the organization and they try to prevent that sharing because then they don't get the gains of parallelization at all, as I just mentioned. And so you wind up with this isolated process that, while very efficient in of itself, is globally inefficient and ineffective. And the way you do this is that you create a board, people that look at each digital transformation that are familiar with the thing across the company. It's not just about the CIO or the CTO might own the transformation, but the business is important too. Everyone's important in this. And so as we look at across it to prevent the split brain, you actually stop the parallelization and you make it a company wide ownership and effectiveness. Now, there's no such thing as shared accountability. And so the CIO or the CTO have to be accountable for this because it's ultimately a technology change. But at the end of the day, everyone should be there, their voices should be heard, and you should move together. And I believe moving together makes you move further. It might not always make you move faster, but I'll tell you, the gains of digital transformation are forever. And so you want everyone in the room when that's happening, and creating that board and then having champions that report up to that board to help move the technology along in their given area is how you do it.
You mentioned too taking more of a measured approach and thinking more tactically with digital transformation. How do you actually approach something like that? There's a lot of companies that we talk to, they may have very old applications that you could see they're from the 1990s. And is it that you just try to catch up in that particular area, or do you try to innovate in that area? Do you look at what your competitors are doing in a certain area? Where do you start thinking about strategically what areas to focus on?
I like the way Apple executes. They're not looking at the competition or what they're doing. They're doing whatever Apple wants to do. And sometimes that's incorrect, but most of the time it seems to be able to set the trend. And they don't worry about the trends, they worry about the outcomes they want. They didn't make the iPhone because they wanted to be the first smartphone. They weren't. They were decidedly lagging behind Google and Microsoft. They wanted to make the best personal device, and that's what they did. Same thing with the iPod. The iPod was, again, not about competing with the other MP3 players, but being the best place to listen to music. And so when they think like that's how you should think about your business from a mindset of how am I going to get the outcome I want out of my transformation? And it's okay to look at the competitive landscape. I think it's foolish not to understand what people have done wrong and synthesize that into the outcome you want. But at the end of the day, I think you have to look at what does your organization need? The innovation your organization needs, by definition, isn't the same innovation another organization needs. And the reason for that is in most industries, 80% of what you do is going to be the same as your competitors. There's no way to get around that. But 20% is going to be different. That's your market differentiation. And so if you try to differentiate yourself with your digital strategy, then you have to be able to look and see where you don't need to innovate, but where you do. And if you're continually looking at your competitors to guide you, you're going to end up just like them. And let me tell you, if you end up just like your competitor, they're going to beat you with experience. They know how to be themselves better than you know how to be yourself. And so your best bet is to, yes, understand what they're doing, but also understand what you want to be and the outcomes that are going to get you there.
I think one interesting case study to think about is Procter and Gamble back in, I think, 2012. They went through a digital transformation. And one mistake that they made was that they didn't actually realize they were leading in a number of areas, but they decided to go to even the next level. It didn't, give them the results that they were actually looking for. So I think it is important to think about the industry and where it's going. So I think that's a tremendous challenge for technology leaders to think about this. So I think this boils down to me is how strong does leadership have to be to guide companies through this digital transformation?
Very strong. If people know they're going to lose jobs, you're not going to buy in. We all work, we all live in a society. And in that way, you have to understand that people are going to feel a certain way about digital transformation. In general, tech has the worst, in my mind, brand in most people's heads. And the reason, there's a couple of reasons. One, that Google, Apple, all these companies really look like they run Rangshaw across all of our laws and customs, and they don't care. And then on the other side of it, what else does tech do? Well, it replaces job. It automates away people's livelihood. And so if you're a leader in an organization trying to do digital transformation and you're getting those technological advantages, people are going to fear for their jobs. And so leaders have to instill a culture where people say, no, efficiency doesn't mean we're getting rid of jobs. We're creating a better business. And by creating a better business, we can all do things we care about more than we used to. And sometimes it does get rid of jobs, and you have to be honest with that. But if you're a good organization, a lot of companies do this, right? The best organizations, they get rid of jobs, but then they offer other new jobs that they're creating for these people, and they train them to do it. Salesforce just did this. They got rid of tons of functions, the companies they acquired, but then they said, listen, we have thousands of openings over here. Why don't we train you up to do those? And they reuse people. And so when digital processes then are looked at and smiled upon, because it could mean career growth for people. And I think that's the mindset you have to have when you're selling these kind of things. And you need strong leaders that understand that culture is really, at the end of the day, the only differentiator companies have these days, or it's at the very least a very important one. And how do you maintain that? Because that's who's going to win in the future, is people that have strong cultures where people trust their leaders, trust their management to do right by them. And that's how you're going to win.
I think that's a fascinating point because often you read about companies are going to use AI to automate, and that's what they're literally thinking about, is to eliminate jobs, do the same. And I think that's just a boring. I don't think that's real innovation. Even companies will think M&A is innovation or cost cutting. They don't really truly use technology to move their company forward or really help people. So I love that. So what would you recommend in that case, and how leaders who are not maybe used to thinking in that manner, I guess they more innovative and forward thinking, well, like where would you start? How would you recommend those types of leaders get started?
Yeah. So let's go back to an entire generation, my generation. I'm on the tail end of being millennial, but at the same time, I grew up in a time when business loyalty didn't exist. You cannot convince me that it does. I not only own a business, but I also know that I've seen people get laid off countless times. My own family been laid off, like just out of corporate greed. And so that's who you're combating. And then Gen Z might even be worse than we're all. I mean, I can't tell from experience, but it looks that way, where people literally want to change an entire system of government because they hate how greedy corporations have become. And so the differentiator here is to approach that and understand that a lot of people have been laid off. They have seen that kind of greed. They've seen the kind of corporate ruthlessness that can exist. And you need to be able to step up and say, that's wrong. This isn't how businesses should operate. Businesses should have ethics. They should take care of the people that take care of them. They should come and be open with it. And that requires what people are calling radical candor, right? Saying, listen, we can't always do this. Sometimes there's a very good reason for layoffs, financially or otherwise, that you need to do it. But in the general, on the whole, you should be able to say, this is what we're going to do. Everyone here is important. And not just say it, because a lot of people say it and then they come in and they lay 400 people off. It's bullshit. No one cares anymore. You're not going to convince anyone anymore. There's a company here in Cleveland, it's a tech company, had the best culture in Cleveland, voted by people and the employees for 7 years straight. And they kept telling people how much they cared. And then they just laid off half their development team and moved them offshore. You think anyone now is going to trust any of them? Fuck no. No one's going to trust them at all. And so you need to back up what you're doing. It's why HR, we call it people ops at Skip List, because it is about people operations. Yes, there's some legalities where you have to protect the business against some of the employees' actions if they occur. Don't get me wrong. We're all aware of those situations, and it's super important that we do that. But on the other side, as we look at it, we care about our people. And that's the message that we should send on it. They're not resources, they're people. They have dreams and hopes just like me or you, and we need to treat them that way. And I think the way you do that is you act like Salesforce is a good example, again, of giving people the opportunity to apply internally and give them 3 to 6 months to decide whether they want to stay in their job or they want to move. That builds trust. Being honest and open about things builds trust. And I think it's a different culture. It's a different mindset in how you operate. But once you get there and you understand this new age of employees and this new age of mutual trust, you can start building it. But again, I think it takes time and empathy and being able to show that you know what these people care about. And it's not about what you used to think it was.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's a good lead into my next question around the industry, the consulting industry. And if you look at big companies like Ford, GE, Procter and Gamble, spent billions of dollars on digital transformations and failed. You see this with many other companies, and it's driven a lot by these external consultants that I think they're being trained just to look at numbers. They don't really have the experience. I don't know how many do to actually innovate, think about problems and the way you're describing. So everything becomes just a number. How do you balance the advice that you're getting from the industry to actually thinking about technology as innovation? Where are the points that you can actually try to innovate as opposed to like looking at a spreadsheet?
Yeah. So I think first, numbers matter. So don't hear me say this. I think the number culture we have can go too far. Like analytics to an extreme removes humanity from it, from anything. And in some ways, that's really cool. But in other ways, it's while you think you're just employing numbers, you're actually employing people, and they see that. And so I think there's a balance between the numbers and the people that you have to do. So when you're a consultant, all you're looking at is the numbers of, well, we can make 30% more profits this way. That, okay, you can lay off 30% of your people and be 30% more profitable. As I say, it was hyperlinear like that. The, but what does the message send? Will you be 30% more profitable, or will you erode morale, which can't be measured by a spreadsheet, 30%? And as you're looking at digital transformation on this topic, know that you still employ people. And you will always employ people until some sort of AI comes. And if they can be creative, maybe you don't anymore, but also you don't have jobs. Look at it this way. How often does this happen? Stupid amounts of layoffs, and then the CEO gets a record fucking bonus.
Yeah.
And no one cared about the goddamn optics. No one cares that now everyone fucking hates your brand, because not only are people buying your stuff. So Activision Blizzard just do it. I'll call them out. They laid off like 150 people. And then the CEO got like a $200 million bonus. Regardless of whether he was going to get that anyways, and I truly believe he was, think about the goddamn optics of that. How you can lay people off, make the gaming experience worse, make your products worse, but then you're going to take that kind of bonus. That's not a backbone, dude. You can say no. While the contract is the contract that they have with the guy, you can say no and say, you know what, we just did layoffs. I'm going to take a zero salary this year, because we both know that the Activision CEO has more than enough money to live his lifetime at. He could have said no and said, I'm laying people off and I'm taking no salary and no bonus this year, because that's where we're at. Instead, again, it's a symbol of corporate greed, corporate imperialism, that he's willing to make everything else around him so he can get his, regardless of if that's the situation or not. And I believe the truth is in the middle here. That's how it looks. And remember, again, you employ people, people buy your stuff, that matters. And so as you're thinking about digital transformation, building a purely analytical pile of shit machine that treats people like garbage will not make you more profitable. It will make you less profitable over time and make you more disruptible. The biggest indicator, and Salesforce gets this again, I like them as a company, and most of the best tech companies get this, that customer service matters because people matter. And when people matter, they want to stay with your brand. You can build Salesforce with a reasonable enough team size in about 6 months, but they have data and they have the best customer service, and it's hard to move away from that. And so that's what they've built, and they know that. And that's why Amazon, when you look at what they want to build, they want to build the most customer-centric company on the planet. And why are they sticky? A lot of people sell shit online, but it's Amazon posting record profits. The reason why? They take care of their customers better. They take care of people in general pretty well. Again, look at the optics recently for Amazon. This is another perfect example of a company that is having very shitty optics with the unionization and how they're handling that, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on. I think they're handling it shittily. The way they're treating their warehouse workers perceivably and their drivers, that matters. And that's going to affect them in the long term and potentially give a competitor a way in. And you know what? Here's the last example. Walmart has such a toxic brand in the communities they operate in that they're losing to Amazon, who is also toxic, but less toxic than the Walmart brand. They're still posting record profits, but for how long? Until someone comes along and builds something that can compete that actually takes care of people. Uber and Lyft are in that boat too. We're going to see in the next 10 years as customer service and taking care of people and putting people first will be a competitive advantage in the world and in business.
Man, this is a fascinating point because cost cutting is one thing, but when you're trying to innovate and make investments, and the examples you're highlighting, Uber, they invented something phenomenal, but they created at the same time a pretty bad experience for the drivers, for most of them, as far as we can tell. And so is that really innovation? Could you say it's transformative? Were we better off before? Probably not. I like the service. I don't know, is it better for a society? So I think as you think about digital transformation, I think one of the things that we're touching on is the people component definitely gets lost, so that even when you roll out, like, for example, a chatbot, I remember McDonald's was thinking about this, some integrated chatbot that would do all the ordering and things like that. But I don't know, it's innovation, but it wasn't a great experience for consumers. So did you really innovate? Or you maybe have eliminated a lot of service agents or something like that, but it
Well,
didn't provide the great experience.
I think you have to separate innovation from the people component. Did Uber innovate? Yeah, they made a 10x better experience in taxis, man. They just did. And a lot of these companies do innovate. But what are the externalities? That's a word not a lot of people know about in today's world because we don't force kids to take microeconomic or macroeconomics, sorry. But an externality, just for the people listening that don't know, that's when you create something, but it has external effects. And those can be positive or negative. If I clean my park, I did do that, but I also, my externality is I made the park a more enjoyable place for the people to play at it. That's a positive externality. If I build a car that gets 5 miles to the gallon, that has externalities too, negative because I'm polluting the planet. So, in that way, these products and services and these digital transformations have externalities. And businesses, whether you're digital now or not, there will be externalities internally to the business, right? Potentially less jobs, worse optics, potentially worse customer service. I almost exclusively refuse to do bot interfaces on the phone. They're infuriating, they suck, they're terrible. And so, in that way, if you have a bot service, I just won't use your stuff. I want to talk to a goddamn human, and you're going to put them on the phone, or if I can't get that in a few number clicks, I'm done. I'm just not even going to worry about it anymore. You've lost a customer for life. Right. And so these automations have effect. And again, people don't measure the people effect because it's hard to put morale. It's hard to put customer satisfaction. It's hard to put these things on a spreadsheet and quantify them. But if you don't quantify them, you run your risk of creating so many externalities that you don't understand that might taint your business in the long run. So sure, you made some profits real cool this year, but next year you might lose money because customers churn. And it's important to think about that. That's one of the metrics you have to think about. When you think about outcomes, and we talk about digital transformation being outcome focused, it can't be we're going to be 30% more efficient. 30% more efficient doing what? If your shit sucks, now it's just 30% more sucking, right? What are you trying to do better specifically? Those OKRs, those outcome and key results that you're trying to measure for a digital transformation should be hyper specific so you can march and make sure you're working on the most valuable things towards that goal. And part of those outcomes should always involve people. Just because it's technology doesn't mean you don't get to put people first. And I think that's where a lot of consulting companies, they're coming in to sell technology and repeatability, but they don't understand the people component of it. Whether you're a life sciences company, which by the way is irrelevant without people, or you're a lumber yard, still irrelevant without people. You need to put the people in the center of it.
I love this conversation. Let's talk about a few practical examples before we wrap up. Say you're a fairly big organization that's been around for a long time, and you realize that you need to start building an e-commerce site. All of a sudden, you woke up and competitors have already launched a site and they're shipping directly to consumers. And you want to start creating a platform, an e-commerce site. Where's the best place to start? Because you do have unlimited budget, but theoretically, you can spend millions and billions of dollars going down this route. Where would you start if you were that company?
It's interesting. I'm going to get some of my marketing friends are going to tell me I'm an idiot, and some of my sales friends are going to tell me I'm a bigger idiot for saying this, but I'll say it. I think everyone's e-commerce strategy fucking sucks for the most part when they launch. And the reason it sucks is that instead of focusing on doing one thing better than everyone else on the internet, and let's say you were selling animal like pharmaceuticals, just as an example of someone we've talked about recently. If you go in there and you try to compete with Chewy or any of these other things, then at best, you'll build a slightly different Chewy, at best. But if you went in there and said, we're going to be the best place to buy this particular type of drug, flea medication, people will come to your site and sign up for your subscription. You will win that segment of the market. You need to think like a startup. If you go in there and you're everything to everyone with 10 people at your stupid company, I don't believe you, for one. And two, you're not going to win anything. You need to go in there and be hyper-focused and be the best thing for a certain crowd of people. And if you do that, then people come to your site. And then when you have a loyal customer base, you can expand that. You can take it and say, well, now we offer this type of drug too, or this type of pharmaceutical. Now we offer a online clinical app, right? There's tons of things you can do once you have a loyal customer base that loves you. And so everyone's e-commerce strategy of spraying goddamn prey and be the next Amazon, it doesn't work. You need to start with something. Even Amazon started as a bookstore. They built a very loyal following and they added stuff as they went. And now they're a cloud provider and they're a logistics company and they're everything else. And so my advice with you, if you're going to do an e-commerce strategy, is you start with one thing and you do it better than everyone else. You build your loyal following and you expand from there.
Well, all right, let's talk about another example. One of the most common things that we see is around data platforms. And if most often these companies are, say, a theme park or something in the service business, and you have these separate systems everywhere, you have spreadsheets, maybe some part of your organization's on the cloud, it's not, and you want to start be able to making better decisions and creating better experiences for your consumers or clients. Where do you start in that scenario? Do you start thinking about bringing the data together? Do you start thinking about one particular area that you could maybe like low hanging fruit? How do you tackle that problem?
What is one decision that if you made better would have the largest impact on the business? Pull the data together to answer that question. And now you do it for the next 10,000 decisions. Eventually, there's diminishing returns on decisions you can make in a business that actually matter. Do I get extra long paper or regular size paper? Probably fucking irrelevant. So you don't have to worry about what decision to optimize there. But if you're a neurotic person like I am, I do care about the decision. I want to be right more than I'm wrong. But there's probably only 20 to 25 decisions being made at any given business that have significant tactical or strategic value. And so focus on getting the data together to answer those and do it one at a time. And what you'll find is you don't have to create this big bang strategy to do that. You can answer that one thing and have the outcome you wanted, which was making better decisions that way. And what you'll find is as you answer those 25 questions, you'll actually have the integrations over time to answer every question your business has within reason, and you've piecemealed it. And I think a lot of people start, well, why have to get all my data in one location before I can answer any questions? But that's bullshit. Something in marketing, maybe that's your most important question, doesn't need data from the engineering systems. It doesn't need data from some random IT help desk thing. It doesn't need that kind of stuff. So why are you trying to get all your data in one location first before you answer any questions? Answer the important questions, get the data you need, and do it over time, and you'll find that you'll fail a lot less often And here's the important part, because remember, 78% of data initiatives fail to live up to their own values. You will always deliver value because you'll be answering the hardest questions of the business, and you'll be helping answer them better.
That's fascinating too, because a lot of organizations will say that we need to build a data lake and do a lot of machine learning around it and do all this deep learning, and with all this tons of data, then we're going to find some like amazing insight. And I think eventually you may want to get there, but you don't necessarily need to start there. And it's different than what other people in our industry are saying. They're saying set aside $100 million to build this entire data platform, and you'll eventually have this holy grail. You're saying it doesn't have to be that way. It's probably the bad way to start.
It's a terrible way to start. Who wants to start with $100 million of risk on their books? I don't think you do. And so why would you start with that? It makes no sense, and it almost feels irresponsible to try to do it that way. It feels safe because that's the way everyone else does it, but there's so much better way of going about that kind of transformation. And you'll hear it. The e-commerce and data thing, you notice how I said start small. And at the beginning, I said it's about agility. Remember, if you answer one question, it's a paradox. Schrodinger's cat. You look is the cat in the box or not? If you look, you've changed the outcome. That's how quantum mechanics work. But if you answer a question at a business, the same thing. You've changed the calculus now. The equation has to change. You were able to answer the most important question of the business. The second most important might change now that you have that insight. And so if you try to do everything at once and you keep changing your organization recklessly and in parallel, you might be doing shit that's completely irrelevant to your business, wasting tens of millions of dollars thrown away on things that will not add value. And so it makes sense to start small, build quickly, iterate quickly, pivot quickly, and do it in that way. Not only will you save yourself money, I guarantee it, you'll also be a lot more successful because you'll always be working on the most valuable thing at any given time.
I think this is fascinating. And you and I love talking to you about technology. We nerd out about a lot of different things. But digital transformation is, I think, one of those topics that really hits a nerve, because it's not necessarily actually about technology or anything digital. It is about building the right solutions, people. And if we don't do anything about it, like I mentioned in the beginning, trillions of dollars will be lost. But not only that, it is having a huge impact on society. And so that if companies, I would love to take Procter Gamble's $100 million. And don't get me wrong, that'd be awesome to do the project like that, but that's not the best place to start. You're not going to provide the most value, and it's not going to have the biggest impact.
No. And at the end of the day, it's about doing ethically the right thing. That's what we believe at Skiplist. I believe everyone should do that, but apparently other people disagree with me, but that's irrelevant for this conversation. The thing is, if you do the right thing, then you know that the piecemeal approach, while less safe for services firms and future platform for firms like us, it's less safe for us, for sure. I make less money in the short term, but I also know that relationships matter and people matter. And so if we're going to be ethical and we're going to do the right thing, then it makes sense to start small and build over time. And ultimately, everyone's a lot more excited about what you've delivered, and you actually deliver value to the world that way.
Thanks for listening. You can always connect with us at skiplist.com.